I've got something kind of exciting to introduce to you today. This is going to be a new type of collectible from Regal Robot. I was going to say a new line of collectibles, but technically I guess this is still in their archive collection line because these are all digitally scanned from the originals in the Lucasfilm archives, but they haven't until now done this type of collectible. Up until now, the archive collection has primarily been recreations, replicas of concept maquettes, so the statues that they would use during the production of the film to kind of work out what a character was going to look like, what an alien was going to look like, that kind of thing. This is quite different because these are actual replicas of the filming masks that still exist in the archives. They were able to get access to those and scan them. And this, you know, I don't think that's ever been done before. I don't think these have been ever used in collectibles like this before. So it's pretty exciting for me as a fan of these sculpts to see you know, the most accurate and most complete versions that we've ever seen. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit. They're releasing these three characters here, three alien designs: Klaatu, Barada, and Nikto. Of course, you are probably familiar with that phrase from the Day the Earth Stood Still, the classic science fiction movie, and elsewhere. And, you know, I've talked about them on the channel in the past. But anyway, these are the names of these well, originally kind of thought of as their personal names and then turned into being more the names of the alien races. But anyway, these are replicas of each of those original vinyl masks. Now, I started by showing these boxes here because I thought it was interesting. The other items in the archive collection do also have boxes and stuff and everything. They're nice boxes, but they're kind of, you know, simple. They don't have typically a picture on them or anything like that, and they're basically just a black box with a sticker on it because they're quite low, you know, production volume. It probably doesn't make sense to have a fully glossy printed box for that kind of thing. But for these guys, they are doing full-on commercial boxes like you might expect from a Star Wars licensee, and they look really quite good. Inside we've got, you know, the usual kind of stuff: custom cut styrofoam. We've got certificate of authenticity. These are limited to 250 pieces a piece, which is still not that much, really, but more than most of their archive collection concept maquettes have been. So let's go ahead and take a look at these guys. I am pretty excited to look at them close up and show you what they actually look like. And here we have the actual masks themselves. I should say the actual mask replicas, because these are not actual wearable masks. They're made of resin, but they are extremely realistic looking. Here, standing in front of them, I am very impressed. These are approximately, I think, 40%, give or take, the size of the actual life-size masks, and this seems like a really nice size. I think they've hit upon a good compromise there between, you know, having something that's impressive looking on display and something that's not going to just take up your entire display, right? I have, I guess, 3 life-size busts at the moment in my collection, and I'm not really in the market for any more because they just take up so much room. They're, you know, undeniably impressive, but, you know, especially for a character like one of these guys, I mean, unless you're a Klaatu focus collector, for example, you're probably not going to want a full-size bust of them. But having a mask like this, a mask replica, I think is a really cool idea. And yeah, I'm really hoping that these do well so that they're going to continue to release other characters from Jabba's palace, for example. I'd really love to see a Gamorrean or Squid Head and so forth. I think there's a lot of potential there. Now, I know how hard it can be to judge scale based on a video, so I'm going to give you a little basis for comparison. I have here the vintage Kenner figures for these characters. We have vintage Kenner Klaatu, vintage Barada, and vintage Nikto right there. And you can see this is a really nice size, I think. They look good with the vintage figures as well, so if you had some kind of focus collection, if you have a bunch of Barada merchandise, for example, which I know of people who do, adding this as kind of a center point to the display would definitely be a cool idea. Anyway, one thing you may notice about these guys is that they're not wearing costumes, right? These are just masks. They're not full-on, busts that have been sculpted, by an artist or something like that. These are basically scans of the original masks that have been, shrunk down and replicated for you, not some kind of artist's interpretation of it. And I think that's actually really cool. Everything for these guys, I think, including the ones like the Dawn Post Halloween masks that were available back in the day, I think all of those were recreations of the designs that we saw in the film. They were not, as far as I'm aware anyway, actually made from the actual masks that they created for the production. And, in some cases, that means that they're very far off, in terms of being on model. A lot of the details and stuff like that, if you actually look at what they've done for sculpting masks or figures or whatever it is, are pretty different. And this is the first time I'm seeing the actual details of the actual mask in person, which I think is really cool. Speaking of which, if we look at these a little bit more closely, you can see, well, first of all, they've got not just the head portion, but they've got the shoulders here. And of course, in the actual costume, this would have been totally or mostly covered up. So it's really cool to see this detail. But if we look closer, you can see even the little stitches that go around the outside of these masks. All of them have that stitching there. So it really shows that they're, replicas of those actual masks. And in fact, if we turn these guys around, you can see here that there's a slit down the back here on each of these masks, which is what allows you to actually put them on as a person, fit your head in there. I don't know if there would have been a zipper in here if it was just sort of a flap that was left open, but you can also see, like on this one, for example, stitching going along here as well. Really cool little details that, if you're kind of a prop or costume nerd like me, really are cool to see in a collectible like this. The other thing you may have noticed is that these two don't have any eyes. And the reason for that, well, really none of them have any eyes, but these two you can definitely tell, because these masks, the way they were created was that, you put them over the actor's head, and then you'd have the actor's actual eyes poking out here and here, so that you can, that the eyes of the character were the eyes of the actor, as well as probably a little bit around their eyes that would be darkened with black makeup. So when we're doing a replica of just the mask, we don't get that. Klaatu, on the other hand, of course, had glossy, unblinking eyes, and those were actually part of the mask, so we do get that with the replica. Just something to be aware of. And I think it's worth talking about the construction of the masks themselves. They are solid resin and super heavy, honestly. They really feel substantial. This must weigh several pounds. And they've got this nice, simple, but, very hefty seeming, strong seeming base on them. I think it's got metal in there. So these should be fine to have on display over the long term. On the bottom of the base, it says Archive Collection, Klaatu Scaled Mask Replica, Numbered Edition. Of course, normally this would have the number out of 250 that this particular one corresponds to. This is an artist's proof that they're sending out to reviewers. So, I'm really impressed with just like the the physical object here. We'll talk more about the paint in a second, but it's really, really nice. I mean, I have a lot of the busts and things like that. I have a lot of statues in my collection, but these are among the nicest ones that I have, which is why I was kind of surprised when I heard that they were only going to be charging $229 for these. Compared to other things in the Archive collection, these are by far the most affordable. And yet, you know, size-wise, they're much larger than many of the things that they've released in the archive collection. Now, of course, those concept busts oftentimes are extremely limited, and they have other things like autographs and original artwork and things like that that come with them, so I totally understand why there's a difference in price. But what I'm trying to get across here is that these are just as good a quality as those archive collection pieces I've talked about in the past, despite the difference in price, and that really is quite impressive, I think. The paintwork on these is also really, really good. You know, I do paint toys and statues myself, so I like to think I have a little bit of an understanding of how difficult it can be to do some of these things, and also an appreciation for when it's done well, and this is really done well. I have no complaints whatsoever about this paint job. It looks really good in person, and I hope on video as well. They seem to have spared no, you know, expense or effort in getting all the little details right here, and I really do appreciate that. So yeah, I've been really impressed with these ever since I got them in hand. I think they're an interesting collectible in that they kind of bridge the gap between people who might be more interested in props or, you know, costumes, and people who just want a cool looking statue. I think this can work for both of them, honestly. Obviously, you're not getting other parts of the costume. You know, if this was just a bust that was like sculpted by an artist, you would get other parts of the costume. But I actually find that to be, you know, for me anyway, the cooler part of it, to see all the parts that you don't normally get to see. And of course, to also think about how this is a replica of what was actually used on screen. We've never seen anything of this degree of accuracy in the past, and so that's also really cool. These are going to be going up for sale, as I said, for $229, and they're limited to 250 pieces. They're actually going to be going up shortly after this video goes live on August 26th. It's going to be noon Eastern time that they're actually going live, so I'll put a link in the video description. Go ahead and check those out if you're interested. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really promising line for Regal Robot. I'm just imagining what a whole shelf of these, all sorts of different aliens from Jabba's palace and elsewhere, would look like, and I think it would be really cool. And they're priced affordably enough that I think that kind of thing is actually achievable. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this line, and I hope you are too. That's about it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.